Welcome to the 1,000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 719th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when Ali the Kareem went up to the Caliph's divan, accompanied by his uncle Ahmad al-Danaf and his lads, they kissed the ground before the Caliph, who turned, and seeing a youth of most valiant aspect, inquired of Calamity Ahmad concerning him, and he replied, O Commander of the Faithful, this is Mercury Ali the Egyptian, captain of the brave boys of Cairo, and he is the first of my lads." And the Caliph loved him for the valor that shone from between his eyes, testifying for him and not against him. Then Ali rose, and casting the Jew's head down before him, said, "May thine ever enemy be like this one, O Prince of True Believers." Quoth Al-Rashid, "Whose head is this?" And quoth Ali, "'Tis the head of Azira the Jew." "Who slew him?" asked the Caliph. So Ali related to him all that had passed from first to last. And the Caliph said, "I had not thought that thou wouldst kill him, for that he was a sorcerer." Ali replied, "O Commander of the Faithful, my lord made me prevail to his slaughter." Then the Caliph sent the chief of police to the Jew's palace, where he found him lying headless. So he laid the body on a bier, and carried it to Al-Rashid, who commanded it to be burnt. Whereat, behold, up came Kamar, and kissing the ground before the Caliph, informed him that she was the daughter of Jew Azira, and that she had become a Moslema. Then she renewed her profession of faith before the Commander of the Faithful, and said to him, "Be thou my intercessor with Sharper Ali, that he may make me his wife." She also appointed him her guardian to consent to her marriage with the Kareem, to whom he gave the Jew's palace, and all its contents, saying, "Ask a boon of me." Quoth Ali, "I beg of thee to let me stand on thy carpet and eat of thy table." And quoth the Caliph, "O Ali, hast thou any lads?" He replied, "I have 40 lads, but they are in Cairo." Rejoined the Caliph, "Send to Cairo and fetch them hither," presently adding, "But, O Ali, hast thou a barrack for them?" "No," answered Ali. And Hassan Shuman said, "I make him a present of my barrack, with all that is therein, O Commander of the Faithful." However, the Caliph retorted, saying, "Thy lodging is thine own, O Hassan." And he bade his treasurer give the court architect 10,000 dinars, that he might build Ali a hall with 4 daïses and 40 sleeping closets for his lads. Then said he, "O Ali, hast thou any further wish that we may command its fulfillment?" And said Ali, "O King of the age, be thou my intercessor with Delilah the Wily, that she give me her daughter Zainab to wed, and take the dress and gear of Zero's girl in lieu of dower." Delilah accepted the Caliph's intercession, and accepted the charger and dress and whatnot, and they drew up the marriage contracts between Ali and Zainab, and Kamar the Jew's daughter, and the broker's daughter, and the handmaid. Moreover, the Caliph assigned him a solde with a table morning and evening, and stipends and allowance for fodder, all of the most liberal. Then Ali the Kareem fell to making ready for the wedding festivities, and after 30 days he sent a letter to his comrades in Cairo, wherein he gave them to know of the favors and honors which the Caliph had bestowed upon him, and said, "I have married 4 maidens, and needs must ye come to the wedding." So, after a reasonable time, the 40 lads arrived, and they held high festival. He homed them in his barrack, and entreated them with the utmost regard, and presented them to the Caliph, who bestowed on them robes of honor and largesse. Then the tiring women displayed Zainab before Ali in the dress of the Jew's daughter, and he went unto her, and found her a pearl unridden, and a filly by all save himself unridden. Then he went in unto the 3 other maidens, and found them accomplished in beauty and loveliness. After this he befell that Ali of Cairo was one night on guard by the Caliph, who said to him, "I wish thee, O Ali, to tell me all that hath befallen thee from the first to the last, with Delilah the Wily, and Zainab the coney catcher, and Zurach the fishmonger." So Ali related to him all his adventures, and the Commander of the Faithful bade record them, and lay them up in the royal monument rooms. So they wrote them all down that had befallen him, and kept it in store, with other histories for the people of Mohammed, the best of men. And Ali and his wives and comrades abode in all solace of life and all joyance, till there came to them the destroyer of delights and the sunderer of societies. And Allah, be he extolled and exalted, is all-knowing. And also, men relate the tale of Ardashir and Hayat Al-Nufus. There was once in the city of Shiraz a mighty king called Saif al-Azam Shah, who had grown old, without being blessed with a son. So he summoned the physicians and the physicists, and said to them, I am now in years, and ye know my case and the state of the kingdom and its ordinances, and I fear for my subjects after me, for that up to this present I have not been vouchsafed with a son. Thereupon they replied, We will compound thee somewhat of drugs wherein shall be efficacy, if it be pleased to Almighty Allah. So they mixed him drugs, which he used, and knew his wife carnally, and she conceived by leave of the Most High Lord, who said to be a thing, Be, and it becometh. When her months were accomplished, she gave birth to a male child like the moon, whom his father called Ardashir. And he grew up and throve and applied himself to the study of learning and letters till he attained the age of 15. Now there was in all Iraq a king called Abd al-Qadir, who had a daughter by the name of Hayat Al-Nufus, and she was like the rising moon, but she had a hatred for men, and the folk very hardly dared name mankind in her presence. The kings of the Khosrows had sought her in marriage of her sire, but when he spoke with her thereof, she said, Never will I do this, and if thou force me thereto, I will slay myself. Now Prince Ardashir heard of her fame and fell in love with her, and told his father, who, seeing his case, took pity on him, and promised him day by day that he should marry her. So he dispatched his wazir to demand her in wedlock, but King Abd al-Qadir refused. And when the minister returned to King Saif al-Azam and acquainted him with what had befallen his mission and the failure thereof, he was wroth with exceeding wrath, and cried, Shall the like of me send to one of the kings on a requisition, and he accomplish it not? Then he bade a herald make proclamation to his troops, bidding them bring out the tents and equip them for war with all diligence, though they should borrow money for the necessary expenses. And he said, I will on no wise turn back till I have laid waste King Abd al-Qadir's dominions, and slain his men, and plundered his treasures, and blotted out his traces. When the report of this reached Ardashir, he rose from his carpet bed, and going in to his father, kissed the ground between his hands, and said, O mighty king, trouble not thyself with aught of this. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 720th night, she continued, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when report of this reached the prince, he went into his sire the king, and kissing the ground between his hands, said, O mighty king, trouble not thy soul with aught of this thing, and levy not thy champions and armies, neither spend thy monies. Thou art stronger than he, and if thou loose upon him this thy host, they will lay waste his cities and dominions, and spoil his goods, and slay his men. But when his daughter shall come to know what hath befallen her father and his people by reason of her, she will slay herself, and I shall die on her account, for I can never live after her. No, never. Asked the king, And what then thinkest thou to do, O my son? And the prince answered, I will don a merchant's habit, and cast about how I may win the princess, and compass my desire of her. Quoth Saif al-Azam, Art thou determined upon this? And quoth the prince, Yes, O my sire. Whereupon the king called to the wazir, and said to him, Do thou journey with my son, the core of my heart, and help him to win his will, and watch over him, and guide him with thy sound judgment, for thou standest to him even in my stead. I hear, and I obey, answered the minister. And the king gave his son 300,000 dinars in gold, and great stores of jewels and precious stones, and goldsmiths' ware, and stuffs, and other things of price. Then Prince Ardashir went in to his mother and kissed her hands and asked her blessings. She blessed him, and forthright opening her treasures, brought out to him necklaces and trinkets and apparel and all manner of costly objects, hoarded up from the time of the bygone kings, whose price might not be evened with coin. Moreover, he took with him of his Mamelukes and Negro slaves and cattle all that he needed for the road, and clad himself and the wazir and their company in trader's gear. Then he farewelled his parents and kinsfolk and friends, and setting out, fared on over the wolds and wastes all hours of the day and watches of the night. And when as the long were lonesome upon him, he improvised these couplets. My longing bred of love with mine unease for ever grows, nor against all the wrongs of time one succor accrows. When Pleiads and the fishes show in sky the rise I watch, as worshipper within whose breast a pious burning glows. For star or morn I speer until at last when it's seen, I'm maddened with my passion and my fancy woes and throes. I swear by you that never from your love have I been loosed. Not am I save a watcher who of slumber nothing knows. Though hard appear my hope to win, through languor I increase, and after thee my patience fails, and ne'er a helper shows. Yet will I wait till Allah shall be pleased to join our loves. I'll mortify the jealous, and I'll mock me of my foes. When he ended his verse, he swooned away, and the wazir sprinkled rose water on him, till the prince came to himself. When the minister said to him, O king's son, possess thy soul in patience, for the consequence of patience is consolation, and behold, thou art on the way to whatso thou wishest. And he ceased not to bespeak him fair and comfort him till his trouble subsided, and they continued their journey with all diligence. Presently the prince again became impatient of the length of the way, and bethought him of his beloved, and recited these couplets. Longsome is absence, restlessness increaseth and despiteth, and burn my vitals in the blaze my love and longing's light. Grows my hair gray from pains and pangs which I am doomed bear for pine, while tear floods stream from my eyes and sore offend my sight. I swear, O hope of me, O end of every wish and will, by him who made mankind in every branch with leafage dight. A passion load for thee, O my desire, I must endure, and boast I that to bear such load no lover hath the might. Question the night of me, and night thy soul shall satisfy. My eyelids never close in sleep throughout the livelong night. Then he wept with sore weeping, and plained of that he suffered for stress of love-longing. But the wazir comforted him, and spoke him fair, promising him the winning of his wish, after which they fared on again for a few days, when they drew near to the White City, the capital of King Abd al-Qadir, soon after sunrise. Then said the minister to the prince, Rejoice, O king's son, in all good, for see, yonder is the White City that which thou seekest. Whereupon the prince rejoiced with exceeding joy, and recited these couplets. My friends, I yearn in heart distraught for him, longing abides, and with sore pains I brim. I mourn like childless mother, nor can find one to console me when the light grows dim. Yet, when the breezes blow from off thy land, I feel their freshness shed on heart and limb, and rail mine eyes like water-laden clouds, while in a tear sea shed by heart I swim. Now, when they entered the White City, they asked for the merchant's khan, a place of moneyed men, and when shown the hostelry, they hired 3 magazines, and on receiving the keys, they laid up therein all their goods and gear. They abode in the khan until they were rested, when the wazir applied himself to devise a device for the prince. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 721st night, she pursued, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the prince and the minister alighted at the khan, and lodged their goods in the ground floor of magazines, and there settled their servants. Then they tarried a while till they had rested. And the wazir arose and applied himself to devise a device for the prince, and said to him, I have bethought me of somewhat wherein methinks will be success for thee. So if it please Almighty Allah. Quoth Ardashir, O thou Wazir of good counsel, do what come to thy mind, and may the Lord direct thy rede aright. Quoth the minister, I propose to hire thee a shop in the market street of the stuff sellers, and set thee therein. For that all great and small have recourse to the bazaar, and meseems, when the folk see thee with their eyes sitting in the shop, their hearts will incline to thee, and thou wilt thus be enabled to attain thy desire, for thou art fair of favour, and souls incline to thee, and sight rejoiceth in thee. The other replied, Do what seemeth good to thee. So the Wazir forthright began to robe the prince and himself in their richest raiment, and putting a purse of 1,000 dinars in his breast pocket, went forth and walked about the city, whilst all who looked upon him marvelled at the beauty of the king's son, saying, Glory be to him who created this youth of vile water. Blessed be Allah, excellentest of creators. Great was the talk anent him, and some said, This is no mortal. This is not save a noble angel. And others, Hath Rizwan, the doorkeeper of Eden Garden, left the gate of paradise unguarded, that this youth can come forth? The people followed them to the stuff market, where they entered and stood, till they came up to this old man of dignified presence and venerable appearance, who saluted them, and they returned his salam. Then the sheikh said to them, O my lords, have ye any need that we may have the honour of accomplishing? And the Wazir asked him, Who art thou, O elder? He answered, I am the overseer of the market. Quoth the Wazir, Know then, O sheikh, that this youth is my son, and I wish to hire him a shop in the bazaar, that he may sit therein and learn to sell and buy and take and give, and come to keen merchants' ways and habits. I hear and I obey, replied the overseer, and brought them without delay the key of a shop, which he caused the brokers sweep and clean, and they did at his bidding. Then the Wazir sent for a high mattress stuffed with ostrich down, and set it up in the shop, spreading upon it a small prayer carpet, and a cushion fringed with broidery of red gold. Moreover, he brought pillows, and transported thither so much of the goods and stuffs that he had brought with him that it filled the shop. Next morning the young prince came, and opening the shop, seated himself on the divan, and stationed 2 Mamelukes clad in the richest of raiment before him, and 2 black slaves of the goodliest of the Abyssinians in the lower part of the shop. The Wazir enjoined him to keep his secret from the folk, so thereby he might find aid in the winning of his wishes. Then he left him, and charging him to acquaint him with what befell him in the shop, day by day returned to the Khan. The prince sat in the shop till night, as it were the moon at its fullest, whilst the folk, hearing tell of his comeliness, flocked to the place without errand, to gaze on the beauty and loveliness and symmetry and perfect grace, and glorify the Almighty who created and shaped him, till none could pass through the bazaar for the excessive crowding of the folk about him. The king's son turned right and left, abashed at the throng of people that stared at him, hoping to make acquaintance with someone about the court, of whom he might get news of the princess. But he found no way to this, wherefore his breast was straitened. Meanwhile, the Wazir daily promised him the attainment of his desire, and the case so continued for a time till one morning, as the youth sat in the shop, there came up an old woman of respectable semblance and dignified presence, clad in raiment of devotees, and followed by 2 slave girls, the like moon. She stopped before the shop, and having considered the prince a while, cried, Glory be to God who fashioned that face and perfected that figure. Then she saluted him, and returned her salam, and seated her by his side. Quoth she, Whence comest thou, O fair of favour? And quoth he, From the parts of the Hind, O my mother, and I have come to this city to see the world and look about it. Honour to thee for a visitor. What goods and stuffs hast thou? Show me something handsome, fit for kings. If thou wishest for handsome stuffs, I will show them to thee, for I have wares that beseem persons of every condition. O my son, I want something costly of price and seemly to sight, brief the best thou hast. Thou must needs tell me for whom thou seekest it, for I may show thee goods according to the rank of the requirer. Then thou speakest sooth, O my son, she said. I want something for my mistress, Hayat Al-Nufus, daughter of Abd al-Qadir, lord of this land and king of this country. Now, when Ardashir heard his mistress's name, his reason flew for joy, and his heart fluttered, and he gave no order to slave or servant, but putting his hand behind him, pulled out a purse of 100 dinars and offered it to the old woman, saying, This is for the washing of thy clothes. Then he put forth his hand and brought out a wrapper, a dress, worth 10,000 dinars or more, and said to her, This is of that which I have brought to your country. When the old woman saw it, it pleased her, and she asked, What is the price of this dress, O perfect in qualities? Answered he, I will take no price for it. Whereupon she thanked him and repeated her question. But he said, By Allah, I will take no price for it, but I make thee a present of it, and the princess will not accept it, and 'tis a guest gift from me to thee. Alhamdulillah, glory be to God, who hath brought us together, so that if one day I have a want, I shall find thee a helper in helping me win it. She marveled at the goodliness of his speech, and excess of his generosity, and the perfection of his courtesy, and said to him, What is thy name, O my lord? He replied, My name is Ardashir. And she cried, By Allah, that is a rare name. Therewith our king's sons named, and thou art in a guise of the sons of the merchants. Quoth he, Of the love my father bore me, he gave me this name, but a name significeth not. And quoth she in wonder, O my son, take the price of thy goods. But he swore that he would take naught. Then the old lady said to him, O my dear one, truth, I would have thee know, is the greatest of all things, and thou hast not dealt thus generously by me, but for a special reason. So tell me thy case, and thy secret thought. Belike thou hast some wish to whose winning I may help thee. Thereupon he laid his hands in hers, and after extracting an oath of secrecy, told her the whole story of his passion for the princess, and his condition by reason thereof. The old woman shook her head and said, True, but, O my son, the wise say in the current adage, and thou wouldest be obeyed. Abstain from ordering what may not be made. And thou, my son, thy name is Merchant, and thou hast the keys of the hidden hoards, yet wouldst thou be caught not but merchant. And thou wouldst rise to high rank according to thy station, then seek the hand of the Qaziz's daughter, or even an emir's. But why, O my son, aspirest thou to none but the daughter of the king of the age and the time, and she a clean maid, who knoweth nothing of the things of the world, and hath never in her life seen anything but her palace wherein she dwelleth? Yet for all her tender age, she is intelligent, shrewd, vivacious, penetrating, quick of wit, sharp of act, and rare of reed. Her father hath no other child, and she is dearer to him than his life and soul. Every morning he cometh to her and giveth her good morrow, and all who dwell in the palace stand in dread of her. Think not, O my son, that any dare bespeak her with aught of these words, nor is there in any way for me thereto. By Allah, O my son, my heart and vitals love thee, and were it in my power to give thee access to her, I would assuredly do it. But I will tell thee somewhat wherein Allah may haply appoint the healing of thy heart, and will risk life and goods for thee, till I win thy will for thee. He asked, And what is that, O my mother? And she asked, Seek of me the daughter of a wazir or an emir, and I will grant thy request. But it may not be that one should mount from earth to heaven at one bound. When the prince heard this, he replied to her with courtesy and sense, O my mother, thou art a woman of wit, and knowest how things go. Say me, doth a man, when his head irketh him, bind up his hand? Quoth she, No, by Allah, O my son. And quoth he, Even so, my heart seeketh none but her, and naught slayeth me but love of her. By Allah, I am a dead man, and I find not one to counsel me aright and succor me. Allah upon thee, O my mother, take pity on my strangerhood, and the streaming of my tears. And Scheherazade perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease my telling of these tales for today, until it be morrow.